Welcome to my channel, Let Your Imagination Take Flight. Today I'll be showing you how I made a raised garden bed with one galvanized roofing panel and some scrap wood. For the legs you can use 2x4s or 4x4s, but I'm going to be using some 3x3s I bought from an online seller who took apart tractor pallets, and they were like $2 for a 4-foot piece, and they're heat treated and not chemically pressure treated. I picked through all his ones and I picked out the ones that I thought were cedar to use. This is my garden space I'm trying to reclaim after cutting down a humongous 30-foot wide climbing rose which got diseased and I had to cut down. So this area by the fence is filled with big roots, and also there's a big stump which we can't dig out, and we've tried to burn it but it's still there. So I'm putting a raised bed there. I had to build this bed a certain way to accommodate all the roots and also the slope of the area, but at the end of the video I'll show you other raised beds I've built using different techniques that might work better for your area. Please make sure that you use all your proper safety gear when dealing with the galvanized metal because it does have sharp ends. I cut one 27-inch side piece to both fit around the stump I had to work with and also to reuse the existing holes. Most people use a circular saw with a metal blade on it to cut their panels out, but I used a nibbler to cut mine because it can also make curved cuts, and I use it for metal art that I do. It costs about $54 on Amazon, but the downside is you need a big air compressor, and I don't mean the big portable air compressors, I mean your big like 5-foot air compressors, because my little one just did not have the power for it, so I had to borrow my husband's. Old roofing material is great because it's thicker gauge and it's also wider than the new stuff. This was free from a friend, but it can be found on the online sale sites for about $1 a foot or even free sometimes. The new stuff you find at Lowe's or Home Depot is about $15 for a 8-foot by 2-foot piece. Old metal panels sometimes have holes or tears in them. So to smooth them out, if you have a jagged hole, you can take just like a little $5 reamer tool to deburr it and make it smoother. It's just a push in and twist motion. And there's also a deburring tool for long tears, but I find for the older, thicker, stronger metal panels that just using a metal rasp or file to sand off the sharp edges, just to dull down the edges, works better. Okay, back to how to make a raised garden bed. So now that I have a short side piece and a long front piece, I cut those in half lengthwise. For those interested in using a nibbler, notice that I'm cutting over a drop cloth and a big garbage can. That's because nibblers put out sharp crescent moon pieces of metal as it cuts. But I'd rather deal with them than the sparks that a circular saw puts out. It's just my weird phobia about sparks. You want to cut your wood legs, which are my 3x3s, ideally 4 inches longer than the width of your half panel. I could have gotten by with 3 legs on the front, but I chose 4 to cover up my pre-existing holes in my panels. Plus it would give me more support if I wanted to sit on my raised garden bed. Lay your legs on the floor with the metal long panels on top and at least a leg on each end. The top of the legs should be flush with the top of the panels, and also on the edges should be flush also. The support leg, either use 1 or 2, just evenly space on the panel. I used 1.5-inch metal roofing screws, which are found near the roofing panels in like Lowe's or Home Depot. And you'll also need a drill and a hex socket bit that fits your screw heads. Attach the panels to the wood legs with at least 3 screws per leg. I reused pre-existing holes when I could. The screws will go through solid metal, but it takes a little more pressure and time to do so. So for older panels of tin, you might want to pre-drill your holes with a metal drill bit. The new tin panels, you don't even have to bother with that because they're so thin. You may notice that my legs aren't even, and that's on purpose to deal with my sloped area and areas where I know there's roots and I can't dig down 4 inches. So once you have the 2 long panels attached to all the legs, take them into your garden and dig out the areas that the legs will sit in the ground. In this build, I have the legs on the outside of the bed. Later on, I'll show you beds with legs on the inside in case that will fit your garden space better. After the long panels are placed, attach the short panels to the sides, roughly squaring them up as you go. Do this to both sides. Put at least 3 screws in each leg. And now for the topper, I used leftover fence boards for the top that I ripped in half on my table saw. I would have used full-size boards, but I only had 1.5 boards in my shed, so I used what I had on hand. Place the boards so that when they meet up, they can both rest on the corner legs. Also with fence boards, it's best to drill pilot holes with a drill bit so that they don't split when you put the screws into them. Put at least 2 screws into each board at the joints. You can do a 45-degree miter joint at the corners, but I went ahead and did an easy butt joint. And make sure you put 2 screws into each board on the corners, and also put 2 screws into the supporting legs in the middles. If you look closely, you can see that my capping boards are of different thicknesses, but I used what I had on hand, and it's only a garden bed, so oh well. Here it is completed. I put cardboard in the bottom to help keep weeds out, and I'll be putting old fallen branches and leaves also in the bottom to decrease the amount of garden soil I need to fill it. That's it for this project, but if you want to stick around, I will talk to you about variations you can make on this plan. But do consider hitting the like button if you enjoyed this video, and feel free to leave any comments you have. Here's a bed that I put the legs on the inside when it was up against the paved pathway. And it follows the same principle. The part against the fence, the wood is on the outside. And I used cedar 2x4s on this bed, and it's a very long bed that I cut the width to fit my space, and then I overlapped the panels where it needed to get the length. Here's a long L bed I made for my parents. The wood 3x3s are on the inside, but I cut electrical conduit pipes 4 to 6 inches longer than the panels and hammered them into the ground along the outside of the walls of the panels to help reinforce the panels. And to keep the conduits in place, just sink long screws through the wood and into the opening of the conduit, and that will help prevent the conduit from shifting. I also put L-shaped aluminum edging on the corners of my mom's bed. You can find these in longer pieces near the gutter or galvanized roof section, which I then cut down and screwed into place over the corners. If you don't mind more expense, building a bed with full-size panels looks great and is actually pretty easy. There's less cutting you have to do. For instance, if you take 2 10-foot panels and make a cut at 3 foot on them, you can build a 7 by 3 foot bed with just 2 cuts. And if you don't have all the proper cutting tools, I have used metal tin snips on the newer, thinner galvanized roofing panels. It's hard, and I wouldn't want to make too many cuts because I did get a blister doing it, but I have done it. I do recommend building a wooden frame for the taller beds just for more support against all the dirt inside. If you do want a tutorial on making a full-sized raised bed, just let me know it down in the comments and I can make one of those. Thanks for sticking around. If this video helped you, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more being creative on a budget content. Have a good day.